Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. This is Josie's Point of View, where we focus on human interest stories from the Carolinas and beyond. Today it's Saturday and it's August the 1st, 2026. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you're new to my channel, I want to thank you so much for stopping by. I hope you find the information here to be informative. And if you're a returning viewer, by all means, thank you for coming back. You know, I always say the tide changes so frequently here on these YouTube streets. So you always have to acknowledge where your support comes from. And I want you to know I sincerely thank you for your support. So feel free to like and to share this video. And don't forget to subscribe. Well, there's been a lot going on over the past several weeks, not just in the Carolinas, but around the world in general. Several military personnel have lost their lives, and some may have received a bit more attention than others. So I wanted to take a few minutes to reflect on the number of service members who have died. Some you may have already know, but others you may be learning about them for the very first time. This is an opportunity for us to recognize and to honor them all. We're looking at the service members who've lost their lives within the past 60 days, and I'm focusing on the month of June and the month of July. We have a lot to cover. Let's go ahead and let's get started. I'll provide you with a summary here, and I'll identify some of my sources for you in the description box. So let us begin at the Fort Bragg Army Base. The date was June the 13th, 2026, and we learned the dreadful news that morning. 3 service members were killed in a single car crash in Wake County on US Interstate 1. According to reports, the accident took place around 12:30 a.m. along US Route 1 northbound between Friendship Road and North Carolina 540 Toll Road. The wreck involved an Infiniti car with 4 occupants, yes, 4 soldiers who were all stationed at Fort Bragg. It was reported that the Infiniti was heading north when the driver ran up US 1 to the right and the car overturned several times. 2 of the occupants were ejected, but the final outcome was just dreadful. 3 dead at the scene and a 4th in critical condition. And the following day, we learned the identities. The 3 deceased soldiers included the driver, a front seat passenger, and one of the back seat passenger. The one other passenger in the back was reported in critical condition, and investigators say that speed most likely was a factor in this accident. 3 young men gone too soon. And I have to tell you, this was just devastating news for our community, a community that was still trying to overcome the Valentine morning death of 3 individuals in a crash on a nearby highway here in North Carolina. And that resulted in 3 people dead. And the 2 of them were soldiers, the 2 soldiers pictured here. They were both soldiers at Fort Bragg. So that was Valentine morning. And now just a few months later, 3 more young men have lost their lives on the North Carolina highways. And now let's travel out to Edwards Air Force Base in California, where there was more devastating news that directly had an impact on us here in the state of North Carolina. The date was June the 18th, 2026. We learned that a B-52 bomber had crashed immediately after takeoff from Edwards Air Force Base. Yes, it crashed within minutes of takeoff, and sadly, there were no survivors. There were 8 crew members on board that aircraft, and unfortunately, none of them survived. And then we learned the identity of the fallen. All senior military officers and civilians, all seasoned individuals who comprised the Air Force elite, the best of the best. There were 4 active duty officers, 1 reserve officer, 1 retired officer, and 2 civilians, all deceased. And among the list of the fallen, there was 1 individual, 1 service member with a North Carolina connection. And he's pictured right here. His name, Major Alexander Davis, age 34. Major Davis is a native of Greensboro, North Carolina. He was serving with the 419 Flight Test Squadron in support of the B-52 modernization project at the time of the accident. With strong roots in our community, he initially attended high school in the area before enrolling in North Carolina State University, where he was the recipient of an Air Force ROTC scholarship. And upon graduating from NC State, he was commissioned as an officer in the United States Air Force in 2015. He's had numerous high-profile assignments, received numerous awards and decorations, and we're so proud to call him our own. And just last week, I believe it was Tuesday, July the 21st, our native son returned home to a hero's welcome. The North Carolina Patriot Guards escorted his remains from the Raleigh-Durham International Airport to the assigned funeral home in Goldsboro, North Carolina. He was buried with full military honors on July the 24th. And now let us return to Fort Bragg here in North Carolina, where we learn of the tragic death of yet another paratrooper. We learned that a Fort Bragg soldier was killed in a motorcycle collision, and the date of this reporting was July the 10th, 2026. And this is what has been reported about that accident. It took place at an intersection in Bladen County, which is approximately 1 hour distance from Fort Bragg. Reports say the driver of the motorcycle collided with a tractor trailer and he was pronounced deceased at the scene. The deceased was identified as 23-year-old paratrooper from Fort Bragg, Army Specialist Omaria Nesmith, assigned to the 18th Airborne Corps. I had some challenges locating his specific unit, but it appears he may have been assigned to the 3rd Brigade Combat Team of the 505th Parachute Infantry Regiment. That's what one source cited, but I'm not really sure because this is one case that has not received a lot of attention in the area. But I did see he was a native of Florida. Not sure how long he had been at Fort Bragg, but I know that on July the 23rd, his body was returned to his home state of Florida in preparation for his funeral. And this morning I noticed that there had been funeral plans. They were made public. And this was an Instagram post. It just suddenly showed up in my newsfeed. I don't even have Instagram, but it showed up in my newsfeed. And it mentions that his funeral service will take place on August the 15th, 2026 in his home state of Florida. And there was this particular note attached I wanted to share. It says, "Come say see you later to my baby Omarion. Attire, boots, jeans, t-shirts, and hat just like my baby wore." So if you're in the area and you know where it is, be sure to show up and be of support to the family. And now let's travel to Parris Island, South Carolina, to the Marine Corps training base. We have not focused much on this location, but this news story is one that caught my eye. We learned from a news report that a female drill instructor had been found dead, and the date of this reporting was July the 17th, 2026. The deceased Marine was identified as 25-year-old Sergeant Darlene Dong, a native of Winnebago, Nebraska. She was serving with the 3rd Recruit Training Battalion as a drill instructor, and she was found deceased at her off-base apartment in Port Royal, South Carolina, which is a short distance from the base. Now, and besides giving a brief announcement that the drill instructor had died, the Marine Corps has stated they will not be releasing any additional information at this time. And the question on everybody's mind is, how did she die? And there have been speculations, but nothing has been confirmed. Now, the Marine Corps' silence does not erase the questions that continue, the question that persists. How did this instructor die? And why are you refusing to address the matter? And as I continued to do my research, I discovered this was not the first drill instructor to die recently. In fact, Sergeant Young was the second Parris Island drill instructor to die in less than 2 months. I needed to find some answers. And after a brief search, I found that other service member. But the articles focusing on his death was not out of North Carolina. They're from the state of Florida. In fact, there were several of them posted in the state of Florida. And here was one. It said Marine Corps investigates death of a drill instructor, 24, found in hotel room. The date of reporting was June the 3rd, 2026, and that service member's name, Sergeant Albert R. Hayes II. So again, he was a 24-year-old drill instructor at Parris Island, and he was currently on temporary duty assignment in Florida when he was found dead in his hotel room. And although there's been no mention of how he died, there were repeated discussions about the demanding schedule of a drill instructor and the level of stress that comes along with the job. So the question to ask is whether or not there's a bigger problem at Parris Island that someone needs to be exploring. Sergeant Albert Hayes, the second, he died on June the 3rd, and Sergeant Young, she died on July the 17th. But they weren't the only ones. But that's another story for another day. And now let's return to Fort Bragg, where we recently learned of the death of two more soldiers, both soldiers killed overseas in the U.S.-Iran conflict. The first notification came to us on July the 17th, 2026. We learned that two soldiers had been killed during an Iranian firepower in the country of Jordan, and one of the dead was a soldier stationed at Fort Bragg. And that service member was identified as First Lieutenant James Tyler Freehan. He is originally from Ewa Beach in Hawaii, but he had duty assignment here at Fort Bragg. He was assigned to the 2nd Battalion, the 55th Air Defense Artillery Regiment. Now, he was one of two soldiers who lost their lives during a drone attack in the country of Jordan. We've also learned that his remains has since been returned home to his family, and he has since been promoted to the rank of captain. And just a few days later, there was more devastating news. On July the 21st, we learned that another Fort Bragg soldier became yet another casualty of the U.S.-Iran conflict. Now, according to information released from the Pentagon, the soldier was killed during a controlled detonation of an unmanned drone in Iraq, and his death actually took place on the 19th, a few days earlier than it was reported. The soldier was identified as a 30-year-old Army Sergeant Michael Emanuel Swinton, a native of Fayetteville, right here in North Carolina. Yes, one of our very own. He was assigned to D Battery, 55th Air Defense Artillery Regiment here at Fort Bragg, and his job title was Air Defense Early Warning Systems Operator. Now, Sergeant Swinton, a married father of two young children, he lived right outside of Fayetteville, right outside of Fort Bragg, in the town of Spring Lake. We know that he attended Jeff Britt High School as well as Westover High, and he entered the military in 2017. And immediately upon learning of the news, our Governor John Stein, issued a public statement. And here's the full statement. It says, I am saddened to share another casualty close to home from the war in the Middle East. And I send our condolences to the family of Sergeant Michael E. Swinton of Fayetteville, who was killed in the line of duty in Iraq. He leaves behind his wife and children. May his memory be a blessing. The governor then issued a very important directive, and that was for the lowering of the U.S. and the North Carolina flags to half staff in honor of the two casualties from our area, First Lieutenant Tyler Freehan and Sergeant Michael Swinton, both from Fort Bragg. The directive was flags were to be lowered immediately until sunset on Friday, July the 24th. And bringing it back closer to home, this has definitely been a community in mourning, with many of us wondering how we can be of support to Sergeant Swinton and his family, particularly to his wife and his children and his immediate family members in this hour of crisis. And it was very pleased to see some steps that were taken by the military. They have announced that he has been promoted to the rank of Staff Sergeant. He has been awarded the Combat Action Badge. He has been awarded the Bronze Star as well as the Purple Heart. Very fitting tribute to a native son. And I am very pleased to be able to share information that was posted about Sergeant Swinton's funeral services. They're scheduled for August the 8th, 2026 here in Hope Mills, North Carolina. The viewing will begin at 11 and his service will begin at 1 p.m. Again, Southview Baptist Church in Hope Mills, North Carolina, and that's on August the 8th. I want to say a special thank you to his family for sharing this information with us and giving us the opportunity to be able to participate in this service. I encourage anyone, if you're planning to be there, come early. Now, there was a note that was posted from his spouse, and I wanted to share it. It says, please join us to celebrate my husband's life, August the 8th. I'm asking for everyone wear orange. That is Michael's favorite color, and we will honor that. And there was no information about his burial. It's very possible that he will be buried at a later date. And that's all I have for you right now, but feel free to leave me a comment below and let me know what you think about this video. And by all means, feel free to like it and to share it. And if you haven't done so already, I want to invite you to subscribe to my channel by clicking on that red subscribe button. It's on the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. And if you click on the bell that looks like just like this one, that's the notification bell. If you click on that notification bell, you'll be the first to know whenever a new video is uploaded. I thank you for watching, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.